Initially it wasn't taken well by some of the senior judges. I'm glad to say that the more recent appointments, they are very much focused on that, but the older judges, I'm afraid, had their own ways.
It is a rare pleasure to be invited to introduce our next guest, Judge Ray Singh. It's an odd evening when you can meet someone who started life as a taxi driver but ends up with a CBE. It's an unusual evening when you meet someone who started at the very, very difficult time many years ago when there were very few black barristers in the profession, but who then became the first ethnic minority judge on the Welsh bench, who in 1997 became the resident district judge of the Merthyr Tydfil Combined Law Court. It's rare indeed to meet anyone who describes himself as a Fijian Welshman. And so this is going to be an unusual evening, and therefore it's my pleasure, and I hope you join me in welcoming Judge Ray Singh to this evening. I feel a bit like Val Dunican here. I think I should be singing an introduction. Now, Judge, can I call you Ray?
Please do.
How on earth did your career start as a taxi driver?
Well, as taxi drivers, you carry all sorts of passengers who never disclose what goes on in the taxi, but on this occasion, I will. The lady who was my passenger, I put all her shopping in the car, and as I was driving, she said, "Driver, you speak English?" Says, "Yes, ma'am." "Have you been to school?" "Yes, ma'am." "Have you got any qualifications?" "Yes, ma'am." "What?" "Senior Cambridge certificate." That was the highest qualification you can have in those days in Fiji, which was equivalent to matriculation A-levels. She said, "Have you not applied for civil service job?" I said, "Yes, ma'am, I have." "What happened?" "I was rejected." "Oh, what's your name?" She took my name, and next I had a letter from her department. She was chief executive of civil service for interview. I was interviewed and given a job, and I carried on, progressed from Treasury to Education Department, and I became Chief Executive Officer, salaries, controlling some 1,100 teachers' salaries spread around 100 different islands. The thing which I was very proud of, every teacher had his or her salary at the end of the month. Now you can imagine those who have lived in the third world. It's not easy.
Is it true that you took your initial occupation as a taxi driver too seriously and decided to continue the cab rank rule as a barrister in Wales?
Absolutely. As a Indo-Fijian, I had a great admiration for the Welsh playing rugby, and as such, I did my bar finals here, and I thought I'll do my pupillage in Wales, and hence I went to Wales.
Talking of Wales, I think Scotland is near. Ray, is it true that the 1969 edition of the Black Lawyers Directory only had one page and you were the only one in it?
Certainly in Wales.
Because some of the young ones, the youngsters here, may not fully appreciate what it was actually like to be not just a minority, but a visible minority in Wales at that time.
It was difficult. I know that my head of chambers was approached by a leading Selk and said, I hear that you've got a Paki as a pupil. And he said, no, he's Fijian. Oh, by God, that makes a difference. I need to meet him. But it was difficult. Solicitors always said, we have no problems in instructing you, but clients may not be happy to have you. So we had to fight and wait until opportunity arose to prove yourself that you can do the same as anyone else.
And did your love of rugby help to break down any barriers in Wales?
Certainly, socially, it did help with solicitors and others as well.
And how did Fiji do against Wales at the last?
Well, if
did you support?
If you recall, at the World Cup, I watched that in Berlin with lots of Welsh friends, and they were all asking me, who are you supporting today? So I said, we will win. And eventually, by last quarter, everyone was supporting Fiji. And thereafter, everyone supporting Fiji against South Africa, which should have been the game for Fiji as well. But there you are. That's another chapter.
From one first at the bar, then, of course, a first as a judge. How did that transformation take place?
By then, I had established myself as a very successful practice, and with 3 sons having qualified as solicitors, I was reluctant to leave the bar. But I was persuaded otherwise.
And what is it that attracted you to a judicial career?
I think it's important that as you progress from as we all will be, majority of you will, I hope, will progress to aim to be on the bench, because it's a great way of finishing your career, but serving the people and the judiciary generally.
And in case anyone in this room is going to be in front of you in the future, what tips can you give us for good or bad advocacy?
Advocacy?
Yeah.
Well, I better not say too much in front of so many sulks and recorders here. I personally enjoy litigants in person. I get to the point, they get to the point when we get on with it.
But is it true that one particular litigant in person made a point with a chair?
Not so long ago, yes. His partner was leaving this country to go back to her motherland in Poland because of his violence. And it was an application for leave, and I gave directions, and mother was visiting her sick father for a week. Everybody agreed that she should go, and with an undertaking, I said, no, I want to make a prohibit steps order, that she must not remove this child, save for 1 week, so that if she does not return, the whole powers of Brussels and the EU will come in. And he decided that he wasn't happy with that, and he got up, he said, you're allowing my child to go to Poland for good. I said, no, you're not listening to me. You're not listening to me. And he got up, and I thought he's going to hit his former partner. She was quite understandable. She knew his behavior, and she was out in no time, leaving me and the barristers and solicitors behind. And as he walked towards me, and I said, all right, Singh, don't move. Behave like Bush and see which way it comes. And he did. And as the chair came, I ducked left, and it went over. And then, and as he picked the second chair up, I left. The police were very good, and within minutes they were there. And questioned. The tape recorder was on, so everything was being recorded. So you can't have better evidence than that. And he said, he was asked, what did you intend doing? Well, I was going to really finish him off. Well, in what way? Anyway, I don't want to talk about it. He was too quick for me.
I don't know how apocryphal this story is, but another Ray Singh story. Two people fighting with chairs in a courtroom. Ray Singh's asked, well, did you not intervene? Answer, there wasn't a third chair. But as I say, maybe apocryphal. So the judiciary, how was your appointment as the first ethnic minority judge on the Welsh bench received by the local judges and the bar and solicitors?
Well, the day I was sworn in by Lord Justice Maurice Kay, who was presiding judge at the time, the courtroom, which is I think about 3/4 the size of this room, there were people standing. There weren't enough seats to be, and the judge's row was full. So I think that answers your question.
No, truly remarkable achievement. Now, one of the threads that runs through your career is equality.
Yes, very much so.
And a feeling for ensuring equality. And I think you were a commissioner at the Commission for Racial Equality for a number of years.
Yes.
How did that come about? And those were pretty important years from 1996 yes. onwards.
Well, I was one of the first founder members of West Glamorgan Racial Equality Councils, as it then was known. We applied for funding with the council, and the councillors, which came back to me some years later, said, Ray Singh will find problems where problems don't exist. We have to calm him down. No funding. But we persevered and worked and set up Race Equality Council in West Glamorgan, later in Mid Glamorgan and the Valleys. And I was then invited to apply to become commissioner. And I think it wasn't your government, Baroness. I think it was the Michael Howard who in fact appointed me. And it was a very interesting period, and I did number of, led the prison investigation to prison service on racism following late Zahid Mubarak's death in prison, and also led a formal investigation into anybody who works for Crown Prosecution Service? The Crown Prosecution Service. I don't think there will be any Ford Company workers here, and led that as well. And there have been interesting times. Changes came about in prison, in CPS, and in Ford Motor Company.
It must be wonderful knowing that those reports were the drivers for change in those areas. Just sticking with equality, I think you've also lectured judges on the subject.
Well, Oba did more than me, I'm sure. He's here. Yes, we were involved. I think before we started that, there was the Bar Council, Racial Relations Council. I think, Baroness, you were on that together at one time. And then went on to what is known as Equal Treatment Advisory Committee of JSB. And you took lead roles in various training sessions of judges, and equalities featured well. Initially it wasn't taken well by some of the senior judges. I'm glad to say that the more recent appointments, they are very much focused on that, but the older judges, I'm afraid, had their own ways of dealing with things like that.
And was there resistance from the older judges?
So, yes.
And education, again, is part of the theme to your achievements. I think you're connected closely to educational establishments as well.
Yes, yes.
And this is the Swansea Metropolitan University?
Yes, I've just finished as a governor with Swansea Metropolitan University. I'm still with the Swansea College, which is a very large college in process of amalgamating with another college, which will become the largest college in Swansea. I'm also involved with Gwalia Housing PLC, which deals with people who cannot afford, and we provide affordable accommodation for them. And as you know, my patch, Rhondda Cynon Merthyr Tydfil, is socially deprived area, and it's important to be involved in those things.
Yeah. And when those students ask you for your advice, as some here might, about entry to the profession, whether to enter, and your advice on how to succeed, what would you say to them?
Well, you have to work hard, persevere. There'll be many doors that will be shut in your face. Don't give up. Persevere. Doors will open. They are opening. The days when we started, I knew the doors, I'll have to move. We will have to push doors open. Now there are many others who are working, both black and white people, working hand in hand to ensure that doors are open. So persevere, don't give up.
I understand you had an interesting dinner companion, the Queen.
Oh, yes. Betty, as we call her affectionately in Wales.
Did you address her in that way?
No, the corgis did all this addressing.
How did you get to meet the Queen and have dinner with her?
I was invited to dinner, and my colleagues in Wales and in the CRE said, well, it's cucumber sandwich, the session. So I said, I don't know. So I arrived there, and I was met by, I'm sure that he's got a very high title, but I'll call him Butler, a doorman, and he said, would you like to have a drink? So I thought, I'll just have an orange juice. And he said, very well, would you like to come, and I'll show you, Judge, where you will be sitting. So I looked at it, and it's a very small map there. And he said, you will be sitting on the left of Her Majesty. I said, where's that barman gone? Let me have a large gin and tonic. And apparently there were only 10 guests, plus the Duke and the Queen. So it was quite an interesting afternoon.
And you promised to tell us an embarrassing story about the Duke's behaviour that evening.
Well,
or perhaps not.
No, he would like to tell it himself. I don't want to take it from him.
Now, you were awarded the commander of the British Empire in 2001. Yeah. How would you assess that achievement compared to your others?
It came, people say it's a surprise. It certainly was a surprise, not the day it was announced, the day I had a letter from the Downing Street. And I asked my son, eldest son, to open it. And he opened it. He said, I think that you got the A, B, C. You got one of the lowest ones. So I said, fine. So I went on, was having dinner with a friend of mine who's just finished being presiding judge of our circuit. And he said, that doesn't look like A, B, and C. I'll have to look it up. So he went and looked it up. I said, good gracious, Commander. I said, what does that mean? I said, why have they chosen me? But it was quite an honor, and I thoroughly appreciated the work which I'm sure others did, and me leading, and I took it on their behalf.
Wonderful achievement. I think you've had an honor from another country as well, from India.
Yes, I was awarded Vasant Swami degree, which is for promoting Indo-Anglo relationship and Indo-Fijian relationship.
And what doors does that open?
I expect there used to be, when I was a student, curry place by the Indian High Commission. But
it's still there,
that's
India
shut
Club.
now.
Well,
but I expect I pop in and I could have some meal in there.
Ray, it's been fascinating talking to you, and it's been an honour and a privilege to be able to ask you these questions. It's a remarkable journey, and literally it started off as a journey in a taxi cab. And we really are very proud and privileged to have you here tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you.